3 months after the rescue, Sarah Mitchell stood before the Dragon Conclave in a chamber that existed simultaneously in multiple dimensions. The ancient beings who governed Dragon Society were not bound by conventional physics, and their meeting place reflected that reality. Crystalline structures phased in and out of existence around her, while the assembled dragons appeared as shifting amalgamations of light, energy, and barely contained power. She was no longer the broken child who had begged for help on that examination table. The physical wounds had healed completely, and while the psychological scars remained, they had been transformed into something that resembled strength rather than damage. Sarah had spent the last 3 months working with human therapists, dragon healers, and even some reformed Kethmari psychologists who had volunteered to help understand and treat the trauma they had witnessed. Commander Chen stood beside her, along with Zephyros in his most formal dragon aspect. The chamber was filled with beings who had witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations, yet Sarah felt no fear. She had survived the worst that sentient beings could inflict on each other. Ancient dragons, regardless of their power, could not hurt her more than she had already been hurt. The eldest of the conclave spoke first, its voice resonating through dimensions Sarah could feel but not see. Child of Earth, you stand before us as witness to events that have shaken the foundations of galactic law. We would hear your account of what transpired in the Kethmari research facility. Sarah had rehearsed this moment many times, but now that it was here, she found herself abandoning her prepared statements. Instead, she spoke from her heart. I want to tell you about Timothy first, she began, her voice clear and steady. He was 9 years old and he loved to draw pictures of spaceships. He wanted to be a pilot someday, like his dad. The Kethmari took that away from him. They didn't just hurt his body, they erased parts of who he was. She paused, looking around at the assembled dragons. Do you understand what that means? They didn't just cause him pain. They stole his dreams. The conclave listened in silence as Sarah continued, describing not just the physical torture, but the systematic destruction of hope that the Kethmari had practiced. She spoke about the other children, Maria, who had been forced to watch recordings of her parents being told she was dead, James, who had been conditioned to associate human contact with pain, Lisa, who had been subjected to experiments designed to break her ability to trust other beings. They didn't do this for science, Sarah said, her voice growing stronger with each word. They did it because they could. Because we were just refugees with no one to protect us. Because they thought no one would care enough to stop them. One of the younger dragons, its form flickering with agitation, spoke up. But why should the suffering of your species concern us? Throughout cosmic history, the strong have preyed upon the weak. It is the natural order. Sarah turned to face the speaker directly. Because we're not just talking about strong and weak. We're talking about right and wrong, and if you can't tell the difference, then maybe you're not as wise as everyone thinks you are. The chamber erupted in harmonics that might have been outrage or surprise. Chen tensed, ready to intervene if the dragons took offense at Sarah's directness, but the eldest raised one massive claw for silence. Continue, child. Speak what is in your heart. Zephyros saved us because he understood something that apparently the rest of you don't, Sarah said, her 12-year-old voice carrying an authority that filled the vast chamber. Power without compassion isn't strength. It's just another form of being weak. She walked closer to the assembled dragons, unintimidated by their cosmic presence. You've spent so long being neutral that you've forgotten what it means to be good. You watch civilizations rise and fall like their entertainment. You study suffering like it's data. But when one of your own finally remembered what it meant to care about something other than himself, you want to punish him for it. The eldest leaned forward, its ancient eyes focusing on Sarah with an intensity that made the air itself seem to vibrate. And what would you have us do, child? Abandon our neutrality? Interfere in the affairs of younger species whenever our hearts are moved by their suffering? Yes, Sarah said simply. That's exactly what I would have you do. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the multi-dimensional crystals stopped their shifting as the weight of her words settled over the chamber. You're ancient and powerful and wise, Sarah continued, but wisdom without action is just another word for cowardice. You could have stopped what happened to us. You could have prevented it from happening to others. Instead, you chose to watch and do nothing, because your laws told you that neutrality was more important than the lives of children. Zephyros spoke for the first time since the hearing began. Honored eldest, this is why I broke our ancient codes, not because I was moved by sentiment or corrupted by contact with younger species. but because I finally understood what we have become. We have grown so distant from the universe that we no longer remember why existence has meaning. The eldest studied both Zephyros and Sarah for a long moment. You ask us to abandon principles that have governed our kind since before most stars were born. I ask you to remember principles that are older than stars, Sarah replied. Like protecting those who can't protect themselves. Like standing up to bullies. Like caring about what happens to people you've never met just because they're people. Another dragon, one whose form shifted between silver and gold, spoke up. And if we accept your philosophy, child, what then? Do we become the guardians of the galaxy? Do we impose our will on younger species for their own good? Sarah considered this carefully. I don't think you should impose anything. But when you see children being tortured, when you witness systematic cruelty, when you have the power to stop suffering and choose not to, then you become part of the problem. She looked around the chamber one more time. Zephyros didn't impose anything on us. He gave us a choice. He offered us hope when we had none left. That's not interference. That's kindness. The deliberation of the conclave took place in dimensions Sarah couldn't perceive, but she could feel the weight of cosmic consideration pressing down on the chamber. When the eldest finally spoke again, its voice carried the authority of eons. Zephyros of the crystal flame, you stand accused of violating the neutrality protocols by intervening in the affairs of younger species. How do you answer this charge? Zephyros straightened, his form blazing with inner fire. Guilty, eldest. I broke our laws knowingly and willingly. I would do so again under the same circumstances. And do you show remorse for this violation? I show remorse for waiting 36 minutes before acting. I show remorse for the years I spent observing suffering without intervention. But I show no remorse for saving those children. The eldest nodded slowly. The conclave has reached a decision. Zephyros of the crystal flame, you are found guilty of violating the neutrality protocols. As punishment, you are hereby stripped of your status as an observer and banned from participating in traditional dragon society. Sarah felt her heart sink. Despite everything, they were still going to punish him for doing the right thing. But the eldest was not finished. However, the conclave also recognizes that our ancient laws may no longer serve the greater good. In light of the testimony we have heard today, we are establishing a new role within Dragon Society, the guardians of the innocent. The chamber filled with harmonics of surprise and discussion as the implications became clear. Zephyros of the crystal flame, you are hereby appointed as the first guardian of the innocent, with the authority to intervene when sentient beings face systematic cruelty or genocide. Others among our kind who feel called to this service may join you. Sarah felt tears streaming down her face, but they were tears of relief and joy. She looked up at Zephyros, whose form was blazing so brightly it was difficult to look at directly. Furthermore, the eldest continued, we hereby establish formal diplomatic relations with the Human Defense Force, with Guardian Zephyros serving as our primary liaison. It appears that humans have much to teach us about the proper use of power. As the formal hearing concluded and the dragons began to fade from the chamber, Sarah found herself alone with Zephyros and Commander Chen. The dragon had resumed his humanoid form, and for the first time since she had known him, he looked truly at peace. So what happens now? Sarah asked. Now, Zephyros said with something that might have been a smile, we make sure that what happened to you and the others never happens again, to anyone. Sarah nodded, then looked up at both of them with the determination that had carried her through the darkest moments of her ordeal. Good, because there are probably other kids out there who need help right now, and they shouldn't have to wait 36 minutes for someone to decide that saving them is the right thing to do. Commander Chen put a protective hand on her shoulder. They won't have to wait at all. Not anymore. Outside the chamber, the universe continued its ancient dance of creation and destruction, but something fundamental had changed. A dragon had chosen compassion over neutrality. A child had chosen courage over fear. And an ancient civilization had chosen growth over stagnation. And in a medical facility 3 sectors away, Timoth. The morning sun cast long shadows across the marble floors of the Dragon Palace as Kira moved silently through the corridors. Her bare feet made no sound on the cold stone as she carried the heavy silver tray toward the throne room. The weight pressed into her shoulders, but she had learned long ago not to show weakness. Dragons could smell fear, and weakness was an invitation for punishment. Lord Vorthak, the ancient dragon sovereign, sat upon his massive obsidian throne, his golden scales catching the light from the crystal chandeliers above. His eyes, like molten amber, tracked her movement as she approached. Even in his humanoid form, he towered over any mortal, his presence filling the vast chamber with an aura of barely contained power. "Your morning meal, my lord," Kira said, keeping her voice steady as she placed the tray on the ornate table beside his throne. She had prepared his favorite, rare gemstones infused with magical essence arranged precisely as he preferred. Vorthak's gaze lingered on her for a moment longer than usual. Something flickered in his ancient eyes, but Kira dared not meet them directly. She had served in his household for 3 years now, ever since her village had fallen under his domain. Unlike the other human servants who lived in the lower quarters, she had been chosen for personal service, a distinction that others envied but she sometimes cursed. "You seem different today, little human," Vorthak's voice rumbled like distant thunder. "Tired, perhaps?" Kira straightened, her hand instinctively moving to adjust the long sleeves of her servant's robe. "I am well, my lord, simply focused on my duties." The dragon sovereign leaned forward slightly, his massive frame casting a shadow over her. "Remove your robe." The command hit her like a physical blow. Kira's heart began to race, but she kept her expression neutral. This was not entirely unusual. Dragons often demanded displays of submission from their servants, but something felt different this time, my lord. "You heard me correctly. Remove it, now." With trembling fingers, Kira began to untie the cord at her waist. The heavy fabric fell away, leaving her in the simple undergarments that all servants wore. She stood before the dragon sovereign, vulnerable and exposed, waiting for whatever test or punishment was to come. Vorthak's eyes widened slightly, and for the first time in her service, Kira saw something she had never expected to see in a dragon's gaze: shock. His massive hands gripped the arms of his throne so tightly that she heard the obsidian creak under the pressure. "Turn around," he commanded, his voice strangely quiet. Kira obeyed, turning her back to him. She heard a sharp intake of breath, followed by silence that stretched so long she wondered if she should speak. Finally, she heard the sound of his claws clicking against stone as he rose from his throne. "Who did this to you?" His voice carried a dangerous edge that made the air itself seem to vibrate. Kira's blood ran cold. She had been so careful, always wearing long sleeves, always ensuring that her clothing covered every inch of her skin when in his presence. But the robe had shifted during her work this morning, and apparently it had been enough. "My lord, I don't understand." "The marks on your back," Vorthak interrupted, his voice growing louder. "The scars. Who did this to you?" Kira closed her eyes, knowing there was no point in lying. Dragons could sense deception as easily as they could sense fear. "The overseer, my lord. Master Corvain." She heard Vorthak's footsteps behind her, each one deliberate and controlled. When he spoke again, his voice was deadly quiet. "Corvain did this? My head of household staff?" "Yes, my lord." The words came out as barely a whisper. For what transgression? Kira hesitated. The truth would likely make things worse, but she had no choice. "He said I worked too slowly, that I needed to learn my place. He used a whip with metal barbs." The silence that followed was more terrifying than any roar could have been. Kira could feel the dragon sovereign's presence behind her like a storm gathering strength. When she dared to glance over her shoulder, she saw that his eyes had begun to glow with an inner fire. "How long ago?" he asked. "3 months, my lord." It was not the first time. Something in the air changed. The temperature in the throne room began to rise, and Kira could smell the acrid scent of sulfur. Behind her, she heard the sound of scales shifting, growing larger as Vorthak began to transform. "Put your robe back on," he commanded, but his voice was changing, becoming deeper, more resonant. "Then tell me everything. Every detail. Every time he laid a hand on you." Kira quickly pulled her robe back on, her hands shaking not from fear of the dragon sovereign, but from confusion. In all her time serving him, she had never heard this tone in his voice. It wasn't anger at her insubordination or disappointment in her appearance. It was something else entirely. "My lord, please, I don't wish to cause trouble." "You will tell me," Vorthak said, and now his voice carried the full weight of his draconic authority. "You will tell me every instance of abuse you have suffered in my household. You will tell me the names of every servant who has been similarly treated, and you will tell me why you believed you could not bring this to my attention." Kira turned around slowly, and what she saw took her breath away. Vorthak had grown larger, his humanoid form expanding but not quite transforming fully into his dragon shape. His scales had darkened to deep crimson, and his eyes blazed like twin suns. I am only human, my lord," she said carefully. "I assumed this was normal. Expected. Master Corvain said that dragons prefer their servants to be properly disciplined." The growl that escaped Vorthak's throat made the crystal chandeliers above tremble. "Corvain told you this?" "Yes, my lord. He said you had given him authority to maintain order among the human servants by any means necessary." For a moment, Kira thought the dragon sovereign might lose control entirely. The air around him shimmered with heat, and she could see the stone floor beginning to char beneath his feet. But then, with visible effort, he pulled his power back under control. "Corvain lied to you," he said, his voice cutting through the charged atmosphere. "Such treatment of servants is forbidden in my household." "It has always been forbidden." Kira stared at him in shock. "My lord, no servant under my protection is to be harmed without my direct knowledge and approval. This has been my law for over 1,000 years." His eyes fixed on hers, and she saw something there she had never expected to see from a dragon: genuine concern. "You should have come to me immediately. But you're a dragon, my lord, and you are under my protection," Vorthak interrupted firmly. "That means something. That has always meant something." He moved to a golden cord hanging near his throne and pulled it sharply. The sound of bells echoed through the palace, a summons that would bring his personal guard running. When he turned back to her, his expression was grim. "We will get to the bottom of this deception, and when we do, there will be consequences." Over the next several hours, the throne room became a place of revelation and horror. One by one, the human servants came forward to tell their stories. Each account was worse than the last, painting a picture of systematic abuse that had been hidden from the dragon sovereign for months. Mara, a young woman who worked in the kitchens, spoke of being denied food for days when she accidentally broke a plate. Thomas, an elderly man who tended the gardens, showed burns on his hands from when Corvain had forced him to handle hot coals as punishment for being too slow. Little Sarah, barely 16, could barely speak through her tears as she described being locked in the dark cellars for hours whenever she made the slightest mistake. With each testimony, Vorthak's expression grew darker. The temperature in the room continued to rise, and several times Captain Thyros had to quietly remind the other guards to step back as their lord's control began to slip. "Enough," Vorthak finally said, his voice thick with controlled rage. "I have heard enough." He turned to Captain Thyros. "How long have these humans been serving in my household?" "Most of them for 2 to 3 years, my lord. They came from the villages that requested your protection after the goblin raids." "They came to me for protection," Vorthak repeated slowly. "They lost their homes, their families, everything they had ever known. They came to me because they believed I would keep them safe." The silence in the throne room was deafening. Even the guards, accustomed to their sovereign's moods, had never seen him like this. And instead, Vorthak continued, they found themselves trapped in a nightmare worse than anything the goblins could have done to them. Kira, who had been standing quietly beside the throne, spoke up. "My lord, we didn't know things could be different. Master Corvain told us that all dragons treated their servants this way. He said we should be grateful that you didn't need us." Vorthak's head snapped around to stare at her. "He told you what?" "He said that dragons were naturally cruel, and that you were actually quite merciful compared to others. That if we complained or tried to leave, you would turn us into your dinner." The sound that escaped Vorthak's throat was somewhere between a roar and a growl. The crystal chandeliers above began to rattle, and several of the servants cowered in fear. "Captain," Vorthak said, his voice deadly calm, "send word to every dragon lord within 100 leagues. I want to know if this is happening in their domains as well. My lord, if Corvain could deceive me so completely, others might be doing the same elsewhere." "I want a full investigation," Captain Thyros bowed. "It will be done immediately, my lord." Vorthak turned his attention back to the servants. "All of you, listen to me carefully. You will never again be harmed while under my protection. You have my word as Dragon Sovereign, and my word is law in this domain." Thomas, the elderly gardener, stepped forward hesitantly. "My lord, forgive me for speaking, but how do we know this isn't just another trick? How do we know you won't change your mind tomorrow?" Instead of being angry at the question, Vorthak seemed to consider it seriously. A fair question, Thomas. You have no reason to trust me. For months you have been told that I approved of your suffering, that I wanted you to live in fear. He moved to stand directly in front of the group of servants, deliberately making himself less intimidating by sitting on the edge of his throne platform, so he was closer to their eye level. I cannot undo what has been done to you. I cannot take back the pain you have suffered or the fear you have lived with. But I can show you what my protection actually means. Vorthak gestured to one of his guards. Bring me the household law scrolls. When the scrolls were brought, he unrolled them and began to read aloud. By the authority of Lord Vorthak, Dragon Sovereign of the Eastern Reaches, let it be known that all beings within this domain, regardless of species or station, are entitled to basic dignity and respect. No servant shall be harmed without just cause and proper trial. All servants shall receive adequate food, shelter, and rest. Any violation of these laws by any person, including nobles and household staff, shall be punished severely. He looked up at the stunned faces of the servants. This law was written on the day I took power, 300 years ago. It has never been changed or rescinded. Kira felt tears welling up in her eyes. Master Corvain told us there were no laws protecting servants. He said dragons could do whatever they wanted to humans. Master Corvain was a liar and a criminal, Vorthak replied firmly, and now he will face justice for his crimes. Sarah, the young woman who had been locked in the cellars, raised her hand tentatively. My lord, what? What happens to us now? Where do we go? You go nowhere unless you choose to, Vorthak said. This is your home if you want it to be. You will continue your work, but under proper conditions. You will be paid fair wages, given adequate rest, and treated with the respect due to any member of my household. Paid? Mara gasped. Master Corvain said servants didn't get paid because room and board were payment enough. Vorthak's eyes blazed. Another lie. Every servant in my household has always been entitled to wages. Where do you think that money has been going? Captain Thyros spoke up grimly. Into Corvain's private accounts, I would guess. We should investigate his finances immediately. Do it, Vorthak commanded. I want to know exactly how much he has stolen, and from how many people. The Dragon Sovereign stood and began pacing, his massive form moving with surprising grace. This changes everything. If Corvain could systematically abuse servants and steal their wages for months without my knowledge, then my entire household management system is flawed. He turned to face the servants again. I am going to make some changes. First, the Royal Guard will conduct regular unannounced inspections of all servant quarters and work areas. Second, any servant who has a complaint or concern will have direct access to me or to Captain Thyros. No more going through the head of household staff, my lord. Thomas spoke up again. What if the new head of household is just as bad as Corvain? Vorthak smiled for the first time since this whole ordeal began, though it was not a pleasant smile. There will be no new head of household staff, Thomas. From now on, I will oversee the servants directly. The guards exchanged surprised glances. It was unheard of for a dragon sovereign to involve himself so personally in household management. But my lord, Captain Thyros protested, you have more important matters to attend to. Ruling the domain, dealing with other dragon lords, managing trade agreements. What could be more important than ensuring that those under my protection are actually protected? Vorthak asked sharply. What good is all my power, all my authority, if I cannot even keep the people in my own household safe? He looked around at each of the servants in turn. You came to me seeking protection from monsters. Instead, I allowed a monster to live among you to hurt you, to make you believe that I was the real monster. That ends now. Kira stepped forward, her voice stronger than it had been all day. My lord, there is something else you should know. About the children. The throne room went deadly quiet. What children? Vorthak asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The Royal Guard arrived within minutes, their armor clanking as they filed into the throne room in perfect formation. Captain Thyros, a massive dragon in humanoid form with silver scales, stepped forward and bowed deeply. You summoned us, Lord Vorthak. I did. Vorthak's voice still carried the edge of barely controlled fury. Tell me, Captain, what are the standing orders regarding the treatment of human servants in my household? Captain Thyros straightened, confusion flickering across his features. My lord, the orders have been the same for centuries. No harm is to come to any servant without your direct command. All humans under your protection are to be treated with basic dignity. Any violation is to be reported immediately to you or to the guard. And have there been any such reports in recent months? No, my lord. Master Corvain assured us that all was well with the human staff. He said they were content and well treated. Kira watched as Vorthak's expression darkened further. Master Corvain said this, did he? Yes, my lord. Just last week, in fact. He gave us his monthly report and stated that the servants were performing excellently and required no disciplinary intervention. Vorthak turned to look at Kira, who stood frozen beside his throne. Show them, he commanded quietly. Kira's eyes widened. My lord, surely that's not— Show them what has been done to you under my roof. Show them what Master Corvain has hidden from both of us. With shaking hands, Kira once again removed her robe. The royal guard, trained to maintain composure in any situation, could not hide their shock. Several of them stepped forward involuntarily, their hands moving to their weapons as if the threat were still present. Captain Thyros's silver scales seemed to lose their luster as he stared at Kira's scarred back. My lord, how long has this been happening? Months, it seems, Vorthak replied, his voice like the rumble before an earthquake. All while our head of household staff reported that everything was perfectly normal. One of the younger guards, a dragon named Xeris, spoke up. My lord, if we had known— I know you would have acted. Vorthak cut him off. The question is why you didn't know. How many times has Master Corvain prevented you from conducting your normal inspections of the servant quarters? Captain Thyros frowned, thinking back. Now that you mention it, my lord, he has been quite insistent that we not disturb the human staff during their rest periods. He said they were nervous around dragons and worked better when left alone. And you accepted this? He is the head of household staff, my lord. We assumed he knew best how to manage the servants. The captain's voice carried a note of self-recrimination. We should have questioned it. Vorthak was silent for a long moment, staring at the far wall of the throne room. When he spoke again, his voice was dangerously quiet. Bring me Master Corvain now. My lord, Kira spoke up suddenly, surprising everyone, including herself. Please, I don't want to cause trouble for the other servants. If he's punished, he might take it out on them. Vorthak turned to her, and for a moment his expression softened. Child, you don't understand. This is not about punishment. This is about justice. And more than that. He paused, seeming to struggle with something. No one under my protection should live in fear. Captain Thyros stepped forward. My lord, should we also gather the other human servants? If this has been happening to Lady Kira, it's possible. Yes, Vorthak interrupted. Bring them all. But gently, Captain. They may be frightened, and I suspect they have good reason to be. As the guards filed out to carry out their orders, Vorthak moved to a cabinet near his throne and withdrew a small crystal vial filled with shimmering liquid. This will help with the pain, he said, offering it to Kira. She stared at the vial in confusion. My lord? It's a healing potion. Draconic magic. It won't remove the scars entirely, but it will ease any lingering pain and help prevent infection. When she hesitated, he added more gently, Please, take it. Kira accepted the vial with trembling hands. I don't understand, my lord. Why are you helping me? I'm just a human servant. Vorthak was quiet for a long moment. Do you know how I came to rule this domain, Kira? She shook her head. 300 years ago, this land was ruled by my predecessor, Lord Malachar. He was cruel, even by dragon standards. He delighted in the suffering of lesser beings, saw them as nothing more than playthings for his amusement. Vorthak's voice took on a distant quality. I challenged him not for power, but because I could no longer tolerate his cruelty. You fought another dragon. For humans, for all the beings under his dominion. Dragons, humans, elves, everyone who suffered under his rule. He looked at her directly. I have spent 3 centuries trying to build something different here. A place where strength protects rather than oppresses, where power serves justice rather than cruelty. Kira felt something shift in her understanding of the world. I never knew. How could you? Corvain has been lying to everyone, creating fear where there should be none. Vorthak's expression hardened again, but that ends today. The throne room doors opened and Captain Thyros returned with Master Corvain in tow. The head of household staff was a thin, nervous-looking man who had always seemed eager to please his draconic master. Behind him, more guards escorted a group of terrified human servants. Corvain bowed deeply. My lord, I came as quickly as I could. The captain said you required my immediate presence? Indeed I did. Vorthak's voice was calm, but Kira could see the fire burning behind his eyes. I have some questions about your management of the household staff. Of course, my lord. I am always happy to discuss any concerns you might have. Show him, Vorthak commanded, looking at Kira. Once again, Kira removed her robe. Master Corvain's face went white as snow. Interesting, Vorthak observed, watching Corvain's reaction carefully. You seem surprised, Master Corvain. Yet these injuries occurred in my household under your supervision. Surely you would know about them? Corvain's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. My lord, that is to say, surely this must be some mistake. The only mistake, Vorthak said, rising from his throne to his full, intimidating height, was trusting you with the welfare of those under my protection. The other human servants huddled together, their faces showing a mixture of terror and dawning hope. Kira noticed that several of them bore their own marks of abuse, bruises, cuts, and the telltale signs of malnutrition. Guards, Vorthak commanded, arrest Master Corvain on charges of abuse of servants, dereliction of duty, and deception of his sovereign. He will await trial in the dungeons. As Corvain was dragged away, protesting his innocence, Vorthak turned his attention to the gathered servants. The rest of you do not fear. You will tell Captain Thyros everything that has been done to you, every abuse, every cruelty, every moment of suffering, and I promise you this, it will never happen again. Kira took a deep breath, knowing that what she was about to reveal would change everything. Master Corvain has been taking children from the servant families, my lord. He tells the parents that you have ordered the children to work in the deep mines as punishment for their families' failures. The temperature in the throne room plummeted as Vorthak went completely still. When he spoke, his voice was so quiet that everyone had to strain to hear him. There are no deep mines in my domain. We know that now, my lord, Kira continued, her voice trembling. But we didn't then. The children, they disappear for weeks at a time. When they come back, they're different, scared. They won't talk about where they've been. Sarah stepped forward, tears streaming down her face. My little brother Danny is only 12. He's been gone for 2 weeks this time, Master Corvain said. He said Danny had been disrespectful and needed to learn discipline in the mines. Vorthak's transformation began slowly. His humanoid form started to expand, scales darkening to a deep, angry red. The air around him shimmered with barely contained heat. Where? He asked, his voice now carrying the full resonance of his dragon form. Does Corvain take these children? We don't know, my lord, Thomas said quickly. He always takes them at night in a covered wagon. They're usually gone for at least a week, sometimes longer. Captain Thyros stepped forward urgently. My lord, we need to find these children immediately. If Corvain has been selling them, Vorthak finished, his voice like the rumble of an avalanche. He's been selling human children. The realization hit everyone in the room like a physical blow. The illegal slave trade in human children was one of the most heinous crimes in the known world, punishable by death even among the most brutal dragon lords. How many? Vorthak demanded. Mara spoke up, her voice shaking. In the last year? Maybe 15 or 20 children, my lord. Some families have lost more than one child. And you believed I had ordered this? Master Corvain always had official-looking documents, Kira explained. Scrolls with what looked like your seal. He said you were testing the loyalty of the servant families by taking their children for hard labor. Vorthak was now fully transformed into his dragon shape, his massive form filling most of the throne room. His voice, when it came, shook the very foundations of the palace. Guards, find Corvain's quarters and tear them apart. I want every document, every correspondence, every scrap of evidence you can find. The guards rushed out immediately, leaving only Captain Thyros behind with the terrified servants. My lord, Captain Thyros said carefully, perhaps you should return to your humanoid form. The servants are frightened. Vorthak looked down at the cowering humans and, with visible effort, began to shrink back to his humanoid shape. When he spoke again, his voice was more controlled but no less dangerous. Forgive me. I am not angry with you. I am angry with myself for being so blind, and with Corvain for his unspeakable crimes. He moved to his throne and sat heavily, as if the weight of what he had learned was physically pressing down on him. Tell me about the documents Corvain showed you. Describe them in detail, Thomas stepped forward. They looked official, my lord. Parchment with your seal at the bottom, written in formal language. They always said something about children being required for character building through manual labor, or discipline training in remote locations. My seal, Vorthak repeated slowly. Captain, when did we last change the household seals? 2 years ago, my lord, after the break-in at the treasury. But the old seals weren't destroyed, were they? They were locked away in the archive. Captain Thyros's eyes widened. Corvain has access to the archives as head of household staff. Had access, Vorthak corrected grimly. Send word to all neighboring domains immediately. Alert them that stolen children may be in their territories. Include descriptions of any missing children and offer substantial rewards for information. He turned back to the servants. I need names. All the missing children, their ages, how long they've been gone, everything you can remember. Sarah wiped her tears and spoke up. My lord, there's something else. Some of the children who come back, they say things. Strange things about where they've been. What kind of things? They talk about cages and other children they've never seen before. Foreign children who don't speak our language. And they mention a man with a silver mask who comes to inspect them. Vorthak's blood ran cold. A silver mask? You're certain? That's what little Emma said when she came back 3 months ago. She had nightmares about the silver mask man for weeks. Captain Thyros looked confused. My lord, do you know who that might be? Lord Malthorn, Vorthak said quietly. He's a dragon lord from the southern wastes. He's been suspected of slave trading for decades, but no one has ever been able to prove it. The pieces were falling into place, creating a picture so horrifying that even Vorthak, with all his years of experience, felt sick. Corvain wasn't just abusing my servants. He was trafficking children to one of the most dangerous dragon lords in existence. The throne room doors burst open as guards returned carrying armfuls of documents and other evidence from Corvain's quarters, my lord. One of them called out. You need to see this immediately. The guard handed Vorthak a leather-bound ledger. As the dragon sovereign read, his expression grew darker and darker. 27 children, he said finally, his voice barely controlled. 27 children sold to Malthorn over the past 18 months. And according to this, he flipped through more pages. He's been planning to take 3 more this week. Kira gasped. 3 more? Who? Vorthak read from the ledger. Sarah's brother Danny, Thomas's grandson Peter, and he looked up at Kira. Your sister, Anna. Anna. Kira's legs almost gave out. But she's only 10 years old. She works in the laundry. Corvain said she was doing well, that she didn't need any discipline. He was saving her, Vorthak said grimly. According to these notes, younger children fetch higher prices. The dragon sovereign stood abruptly, his decision made. Captain mobilized the royal guard, full battle formation. We're going to the southern wastes. My lord, that could be seen as an act of war. Malthorn's domain is sovereign territory. Then let it be war, Vorthak replied, his eyes blazing. Those children are under my protection and I failed them. I will not fail them again. He turned to the servants. All of you remain in the palace. You'll be safe here and I want you available to identify the children when we bring them home. When, my lord? Sarah asked hopefully. When? Vorthak confirmed firmly. Not if. When? I give you my word as Dragon Sovereign. Every child taken from this household will be returned safely, or I will die in the attempt. The royal guard assembled in the courtyard within the hour, their armor gleaming in the afternoon sun. 50 of the finest dragon warriors in the eastern reaches stood ready for battle. But Vorthak knew that even with all their strength, what they were about to attempt was extremely dangerous. Malthorn's domain was a fortress built into the side of an active volcano. The southern wastes were a hellish landscape of lava flows and poisonous gases, natural defenses that had kept Malthorn safe from challengers for centuries. More importantly, attacking another Dragon Lord's domain without proof of wrongdoing could bring the wrath of the Dragon Council down upon them all. My lord, Captain Thyros approached as Vorthak finished donning his battle armor. I've been thinking about our approach. A direct assault on Malthorn's fortress would be suicide, even with our full force. I know, Vorthak replied, checking the straps on his massive sword, which is why we're not going to assault the fortress. My lord, according to Corvain's records, the children are kept in a separate facility, a hidden camp about 10 miles from Malthorn's main stronghold. It's where they prepare the children for sale to other buyers. The words left a bitter taste in Vorthak's mouth. He had read enough of Corvain's detailed notes to understand exactly what kind of preparation was involved. and it made him want to burn the entire southern wastes to ash. A rescue mission, then? Captain Thyros asked. Precisely. We get in, get the children, and get out. If we're fast enough, we can be gone before Malthorn even knows we were there. One of the younger guards, Xerus, stepped forward. My lord, what if the children aren't all there? What if they've already been sold and moved elsewhere? It was a possibility Vorthak had been trying not to think about. Then we find out where they've been taken and we follow them. However long it takes, however far we have to go. He climbed onto the platform where he could address all his guards at once. Listen to me, all of you. What we're doing today goes beyond duty, beyond law, beyond politics. We're going to save children who should never have been in danger in the first place. Some of you might not come back. If anyone wants to leave, do it now and there will be no shame in it. Not a single guard moved. Captain Thyros stepped forward and saluted. My lord, the royal guard stands ready. Vorthak felt a surge of pride in his warriors, but also a heavy weight of responsibility. These dragons were willing to follow him into almost certain death because they trusted his judgment. He prayed he was worthy of that trust. Transform, he commanded. We fly to war. The courtyard erupted in a symphony of transformation as 50 dragons shed their humanoid forms and took to the sky. Vorthak led them high into the clouds, where the cold air helped cool his burning rage and clear his mind for the battle ahead. The flight to the southern wastes took 3 hours, even at their fastest speed. As they approached Malthorn's territory, the landscape below changed from green fields to rocky wasteland, and finally to the hellish volcanic region that Malthorn called home. There, Captain Thyros's voice reached him through the mental link that connected all dragons in flight, the camp, just as Corvain's map indicated. Vorthak looked down and saw it, a collection of wooden buildings surrounded by high walls, hidden in a valley between 2 lava flows. Smoke rose from several chimneys and he could see figures moving around the compound. Guards at the gates, Xerus reported. At least a dozen, maybe more inside the buildings. Can you see any children? Vorthak asked. There, another guard called out. In the courtyard behind the main building. They're in cages. Vorthak's vision sharpened and he saw them too. Small figures huddled in metal cages exposed to the harsh elements. Even from this distance he could see that they were malnourished and terrified. The sight filled him with a cold, deadly rage that was somehow worse than the burning fury he had felt earlier. This wasn't the heat of sudden anger. This was the ice-cold determination of a predator who had found his prey. New plan, he announced. I go in alone first. I want those guards eliminated before they can hurt the children. My lord, that's too dangerous, Captain Thyros began. I'm not asking for permission, Captain. I'm giving you an order. Vorthak's mental voice brooked no argument. Give me 60 seconds to neutralize the immediate threats, then come in fast and secure the children. Without waiting for a response, Vorthak folded his wings and dove toward the camp like a falling star. He hit the ground in the center of the courtyard, his massive dragon form crushing 2 guards instantly and sending the others scrambling for weapons. Dragon attack. One of them screamed, but his voice was cut short as Vorthak's tail swept him into a stone wall. The dragon sovereign fought with surgical precision, using just enough force to eliminate threats without damaging the buildings that held the children. Within 30 seconds, every guard in the compound was dead or unconscious. The children in the cages pressed themselves against the far sides of their prisons, terrified by the sudden appearance of an enormous dragon. Vorthak could see his own servants among them. Little Anna cowering in a cage with 3 other girls, Danny huddled with a group of boys, and so many others he didn't recognize. It's all right, he said, transforming back to his humanoid form and approaching the cages slowly. I'm here to take you home. Anna looked up at him with wide, fearful eyes. You're the Dragon Lord. Master Corvain said you sent us here for punishment. The pain in her voice hit Vorthak harder than any physical blow could have. Master Corvain lied to you, child. I never sent you anywhere. I came here to bring you home. The royal guard landed in the courtyard behind him, immediately forming a defensive perimeter, while Captain Thyros approached the cages. Keys, my lord? The captain asked. Vorthak looked around the compound until he spotted a guard tower. There, probably in the guard station. While Thyros went to find the keys, Vorthak knelt down beside the nearest cage, where a group of very young children were huddled together. None of them looked familiar, which meant they had been stolen from other domains. What are your names? He asked gently. A little boy, probably no more than 6 years old, whispered, "I'm Marcus, my lord. These are my friends Emma and Lily and James. We're from the Northern Valleys." Vorthak's heart clenched. The Northern Valleys were over 200 miles away, in Lord Theron's domain. These children had been missing for who knew how long. "Well, Marcus, Emma, Lily, and James, you're safe now. We're going to take you home to your families." "Really?" Emma asked, her voice barely audible. "The Silver Mask Man said we would never see our families again." "The Silver Mask Man was wrong," Vorthak said firmly, "and he's going to pay for what he's done to you." Captain Thyros returned with a ring of keys and began unlocking the cages. As the children were freed, Vorthak got his first close look at what had been done to them. They were all thin, dirty, and bearing signs of abuse. Some had fresh injuries. Others showed the lingering effects of malnutrition and neglect. "How many children total?" he asked one of his guards who was doing a count. 37, my lord. 27 from our domain, as Corvain's records indicated, plus 10 from other territories." "Any seriously injured?" "Several need immediate medical attention, my lord. But they'll all survive if we can get them proper care quickly." Vorthak nodded grimly. "We need to move fast. It won't be long before someone reports our presence to Malthorn." As if summoned by his words, a deep roar echoed across the volcanic landscape. In the distance, Vorthak could see a massive shape rising from the direction of Malthorn's fortress. "He knows we're here," Captain Thyros observed. "Good," Vorthak replied, his eyes glowing with anticipation. "I was hoping he'd come to us." Lord Malthorn approached like a living nightmare, his massive black form blotting out the sun as he descended toward the camp. Even among dragons, he was considered enormous, easily twice the size of most of his kind, with scales that seemed to absorb light and eyes like pools of molten lava. "Vorthak!" His voice boomed across the valley, causing several of the children to cry out in terror. "How dare you invade my domain?" Vorthak stepped forward, placing himself between Malthorn and the children. "I dare because you have stolen what is mine, Malthorn. These children are under my protection." Malthorn landed heavily, his claws gouging deep furrows in the rocky ground. "Your protection? These are slaves, legally purchased from your own household staff. I have the documents to prove it." "Documents forged with my stolen seal," Vorthak replied coldly. "And even if they were legitimate, no law in any dragon domain allows for the enslavement of children." "The strong take what they will from the weak," Malthorn snarled. "It has always been so, not in my domain, and not while I draw breath." The two dragon lords faced each other in the courtyard, their combined presence making the very air crackle with energy. Behind Vorthak, his royal guard formed a protective circle around the freed children, while several guards helped the weakest ones to their feet. "You cannot win this fight." "Vorthak," Malthorn said, his voice dropping to a threatening rumble, "I am stronger than you, and this is my territory. Leave now and I might let you live." "I didn't come here to win," Vorthak replied. "I came here to save children. And I'm not leaving without all of them." "All of them?" Malthorn's laugh was like the sound of grinding stone. "You think these 37 whelps are all there are?" "I have been collecting human children for decades, Vorthak. There are hundreds more where these came from." The admission hit Vorthak like a physical blow. Hundreds of children stolen from their families living in conditions like this or worse. The scope of Malthorn's crimes was beyond anything he had imagined. "Where are they?" Vorthak demanded. "Scattered across the known world, sold to the highest bidders. Some work in the deep mines of the eastern kingdoms. Others serve in the pleasure houses of the southern cities. A few lucky ones might even still be alive." Captain Thyros stepped forward, his voice thick with rage. "You monster. Those are children you're talking about." "They are commodities," Malthorn corrected. "Valuable ones, too. Do you know what a healthy human child sells for in the right markets? More than most dragons make in a year." Vorthak felt something inside him break. All his attempts at maintaining control, at being strategic and careful, shattered in the face of Malthorn's casual cruelty. "Captain," he said quietly, "get the children out of here now." "My lord?" "Take them and fly home as fast as you can. Don't look back, don't wait for me, don't engage in any fights. Just get them to safety." "What about you, my lord?" Vorthak began to transform, his humanoid form expanding and darkening as his dragon shape emerged. "I'm going to kill Malthorn, and then I'm going to find every child he's ever sold and bring them home." "You can try," Malthorn laughed, also beginning his transformation. "But you'll die here today, and those children will simply be sold again to replace the profit you've cost me." The battle began without warning as Malthorn lunged forward, his massive jaws snapping shut inches from Vorthak's neck. Vorthak rolled aside and lashed out with his tail, catching Malthorn across the ribs and sending him staggering. The two dragons circled each other in the courtyard, their movements shaking the ground and sending cracks through the stone walls of the surrounding buildings. Above them, the royal guard took to the sky with the children, their wings beating frantically as they tried to gain altitude and distance from the battle below. Malthorn was bigger and stronger, but Vorthak was faster and more experienced in combat. They traded blows that would have shattered mountains, their roars echoing across the entire southern wastes. Fire met fire as their breath weapons clashed in the center of the courtyard, creating a pillar of flame that rose hundreds of feet into the air. "You should have minded your own business," Malthorn snarled as his claws raked across Vorthak's shoulder, drawing deep gouges in the golden scales. "These children are my business," Vorthak replied, his own claws finding purchase in Malthorn's neck. "Every stolen child is my business." They grappled in the ruins of the camp, destroying buildings and setting fires that would burn for days. Malthorn's size advantage was telling. Each of his blows carried tremendous force, and Vorthak was gradually being worn down despite his superior skill. But then something changed. As they fought, Vorthak began to notice something strange about Malthorn's movements. The black dragon was favoring his left side, and there were old scars along his ribs that looked like they had never healed properly. "Old wounds?" Vorthak taunted as he dodged another massive swipe. "Someone hurt you badly, didn't they?" Malthorn's response was a roar of rage, but Vorthak had found his weakness. He focused his attacks on Malthorn's left side, targeting the old injuries and gradually opening them up again. Black blood began to flow freely from Malthorn's wounds, and his movements became slower and more labored. The bigger dragon was tiring, his breath coming in harsh gasps. "You cannot kill me," Malthorn wheezed. "Even if you win here, you'll never find all the children. I have buyers in a dozen different kingdoms, partners in 20 different cities. The trade will continue without me." "Maybe," Vorthak admitted, pressing his advantage and driving Malthorn back against the remains of the guard tower. "But it won't continue with you." He struck with all his remaining strength, his claws piercing Malthorn's chest and finding his heart. The black dragon's eyes went wide with shock and pain. You were always too soft, Vorthak," Malthorn gasped with his dying breath. "Too concerned with protecting the weak. It will be your downfall." "Perhaps," Vorthak replied as Malthorn's massive form collapsed. "But it won't be today." Standing over the body of his defeated enemy, Vorthak surveyed the destruction around him. The camp was in ruins, but the children were safe. He had kept his promise to bring them home, but Malthorn's words echoed in his mind. Hundreds of children scattered across the known world. The fight was far from over. In many ways, it was just beginning. Taking to the sky, Vorthak followed the trail of his royal guard home, his mind already working on plans for what would come next. He had saved 37 children today, but there were so many more out there who still needed saving, and he would find them all, no matter how long it took. 3 months had passed since the battle with Malthorn, and the Dragon Palace had transformed in ways that no one could have predicted. The throne room, once a place of formal ceremony and distant authority, now regularly filled with the sounds of children's laughter and conversation. Vorthak sat on his throne, reviewing reports from across the known world, while little Anna played quietly at his feet with a set of wooden toys that one of the guards had carved for her. She had recovered physically from her ordeal, but she still had nightmares, and being close to the Dragon Sovereign seemed to help her feel safe. "My lord," Captain Thyros approached with a scroll in his hands. "We have word from the northern kingdoms. 3 more children have been located and freed. Condition?" Vorthak asked, not looking up from his own paperwork. "Alive, but requiring medical attention. They should be here within the week." Vorthak nodded grimly. It was good news, but tempered by the knowledge of how much suffering those children had endured. In the 3 months since Malthorn's death, they had located and rescued 47 children from various locations. It was progress, but they had learned that Malthorn's network was even larger than anyone had imagined. Any word from Lord Theron about the investigation in his domain? His people have arrested 6 officials who were taking bribes to look the other way during child trafficking operations. He's also implementing the new protection protocols you suggested. The protection protocols were Vorthak's response to discovering how widespread the problem had become. Working with other dragon lords who were horrified by what they had learned, he had helped establish new laws and procedures to prevent children from being stolen and sold. What about the letter from the Dragon Council? Captain Thyros hesitated. They're still debating whether to officially sanction your actions against Malthorn. Some members feel that attacking another lord's domain, even for the reasons you had, sets a dangerous precedent. Let them debate, Vorthak said dismissively. I have more important concerns than their political posturing. He gestured around the throne room where several human families were going about their daily business. The servants who had been abused under Corvain's rule were healing, both physically and emotionally. More importantly, they were no longer servants in the traditional sense. After learning the full extent of how his household had been mismanaged, Vorthak had made radical changes. The humans who chose to stay were now paid employees with contracts, rights, and protections. They had proper quarters, regular rest periods, and most importantly, they had direct access to him if there were any problems. My lord, Kira approached from the side chamber where she had been working. In the month since the revelation of Corvain's crimes, she had become something unprecedented. The first human advisor to a dragon sovereign. Yes, Kira. I've finished reviewing the financial records from the rescued children's families. Most of them want to return to their home villages, but 17 families have asked if they can stay here permanently. And what do you think we should tell them?
Kira smiled.
I think we should say yes. This place has become something special, my lord. A sanctuary for humans who have nowhere else to go. She was right. Word had spread throughout the eastern reaches about what had happened at the Dragon Palace. Families who had lost children to traffickers came seeking help. Humans who had been mistreated by other lords asked for sanctuary. Even some who had never been harmed came simply because they had heard that this was a place where humans and dragons lived together as equals. Speaking of which, Kira continued, there's a delegation here to see you. 3 dragon lords who say they want to implement similar changes in their own domains. Vorthak raised an eyebrow. Show them in. The 3 dragons who entered the throne room were younger lords, each ruling domains that bordered Vorthak's territory. They looked around with obvious curiosity at the sight of human children playing freely while their parents worked alongside dragon guards. Lord Vorthak, the first one spoke. I am Lord Drazen of the Crystal Mountains. We have come to ask for your guidance about. We have been investigating our own domain since word spread of what happened here. What we found, Drazen shook his head. We found evidence of abuse, theft, and corruption among our own staff. Nothing as severe as what Malthorn was doing, but still unacceptable. The second dragon, a female with silver scales, stepped forward. I am Lady Seraphine of the Western Plains. I discovered that my household staff had been charging the human villagers illegal taxes and keeping the money for themselves. When the humans couldn't pay, their children were taken as collateral. And you want advice on how to fix these problems? More than advice, the third dragon said. I am Lord Gareth of the Southern Hills. We want to know if you would be willing to help us establish the same kind of protections you have here. Vorthak considered their request carefully. Why? Why does this matter to you? Because we saw what happened when Malthorn was exposed, Drazen replied. The other dragon lords turned on him completely once they knew the truth. No one wants to be associated with child trafficking or systematic abuse. But more than that, he paused, looking around the throne room again. This place feels different. There's no fear here. The humans don't cower when they see us. They actually seem happy. Happiness is not something I ever thought to consider when managing my domain, Lady Seraphine admitted. But seeing how your people react to you, how willingly they work, how much they accomplish when they're not afraid, it makes me realize how much potential I've been wasting. Anna looked up from her toys and tugged on Vorthak's robe. Uncle Vorthak, who are the new dragons? The visiting lord stared in shock at the little girl who had just called the dragon sovereign uncle and seemed completely unafraid of his massive presence. These are Lords Drazen, Seraphine, and Gareth, Vorthak replied gently. They're here to learn about how we do things differently. Anna studied the 3 visitors seriously. Are they nice dragons like you and Captain Thyros? I hope so, Vorthak said with a slight smile. What do you think? Anna walked over to Lord Drazen and looked up at him critically. You seem sad. Are you sad because someone hurt children in your home too? Drazen, a dragon lord who commanded armies and ruled thousands of subjects, knelt down to Anna's eye level. Yes, little one. I am sad about that. but I want to learn how to make sure it never happens again." Anna nodded approvingly. "Uncle Vorthak is really good at protecting people. He saved me and Danny and all our friends. He'll teach you how to do it too." The simple faith in the child's voice seemed to affect all three visiting lords profoundly. "Yes," Drazen said quietly, "I believe he will." As the day wore on, Vorthak found himself explaining the changes he had made, not just the policies and procedures, but the fundamental shift in thinking that had made everything else possible. "The key," he told them as they sat in his private study, "is remembering that strength without purpose is just brutality. We have power so that we can protect those who don't. We rule so that we can serve justice. We command so that we can ensure order and safety. But how do you balance that with maintaining authority?" Lord Gareth asked. "Don't the humans start to take advantage if you're too lenient?" "Look around," Vorthak replied. "Do these people look like they're taking advantage? They work harder now than they ever did under Corvain's brutal rule. They're more creative, more efficient, more loyal. Fear might ensure obedience, but respect ensures dedication." Lady Seraphine nodded slowly. "And the other dragon lords? How do they react to these changes?" "Some approve, some disapprove. Most are waiting to see if it works long-term," Vorthak admitted. "But the results speak for themselves. My domain is more prosperous now than it has ever been. Trade is up, crime is down, and I have the most loyal subjects in the eastern reaches." "Because they're not really subjects anymore," Captain Thyros added, entering the study with a report. "They're partners." As the evening approached and the visiting lords prepared to return to their own domains, Anna approached Vorthak one final time. "Uncle Vorthak, will you tell me the story again? About how you saved us from the bad dragon?" "Of course, little one." As Vorthak began the familiar tale, he noticed that the three visiting lords had stayed to listen. They heard about courage and sacrifice, about the importance of keeping promises, and about how even the smallest act of kindness could change everything. But most importantly, they heard about how sometimes the greatest strength was shown not in conquering enemies, but in protecting friends. When the story was finished and Anna had been tucked into bed, Lord Drazen approached Vorthak one final time. "Thank you," he said simply, "for showing us a better way." "Don't thank me yet," Vorthak replied. "Thank me when every child in your domain is safe, fed, and loved. Thank me when fear no longer rules your lands. Thank me when you can tell your own stories of protection and justice." As the three lords departed, flying off into the night sky, Vorthak stood on his balcony and looked out over his domain. In the distance, he could see the lights of villages where families slept safely, knowing that their children would wake up in their own beds. It wasn't perfect. There were still traffickers to catch, still children to rescue, still wrongs to right, but it was better than it had been. And tomorrow it would be better still. Behind him, Kira approached with the final reports of the day. "The last three families have decided to stay permanently," she reported. "And we've received word that 4 more dragon lords want to visit next month to learn about our methods." Vorthak nodded, satisfied. "Good. Change spreads slowly, but it does spread." "My lord, may I ask you something?" "Of course. Do you ever regret it? Taking on all this responsibility? Fighting battles that aren't really yours to fight?" Vorthak considered the question for a long moment. "Kira, what did you call me earlier today when you were talking to Anna?" I called you Uncle Vorthak." She asked me what she should call you, and that just seemed to fit. "Do you know what that means to me? A human child calling me uncle without fear, with genuine affection." Kira shook her head. "It means I'm not just a ruler anymore. I'm not just a dragon sovereign who commands through power and fear. I'm family. I'm someone who protects because he loves, not because he has to." He turned to face her, and Kira saw something in his ancient eyes that she had never expected to see. Peace. "No, Kira, I don't regret any of it. This is who I was always meant to be."